Howdy folks, and today we're looking at how to paint the spawn of Chotec or a salamander if you're into fantasy. So we primed the model black, we did a white highlight as I usually do, and now I'm using one of my favourite colours, which is the fire red. So we're using that for most of the model. It is an amazing colour, so you know, if you ever get a chance to use it, I definitely would. So now I'm using orange fire. Just saw it on the on the sale of the salamander. Yeah, it's quite a nice orange. And I think once I've done that, I will be using hot orange for the other bits and bobs. So the way I do my skinks is I use light sea blue and just spray that all over the model. So now I'm just doing the stone using sea grey. It's one of my favourite colours as well. I think it's a really useful colour to have. You can do a highlight of that. If you did, you'd use barley grey, which I think is what I'm doing here anyway. Yeah, so the remaining of the white bits that I haven't touched upon yet, I am just using hot orange. So the feet need to be a little bit darker, so here I am using Vallejo black. And I thought the sail came out a little bit too bright, so now I'm touching it up and going back in with the black to basically touch upon any of the bits which I thought might have been a little bit too bright. And I thought actually in the next sort of step I could probably do with adding a bit of yellow into it. So yeah, I ended up using Vallejo white, did the highlights again, otherwise the yellow wouldn't show up, and then after we've done the highlights we're going to be using sun yellow, which is another great colour. Really works well for things like Imperial Fists and that. But yeah, I've really enjoyed using that colour. So for the gold part, we are using Retributor armour, and we're using that on the skinks as well as the salamander itself. I like Retributor armour because it tends to cover the model in one coat. So it is definitely a colour that I would recommend using. It's great. It costs a little bit more, but it is great. So the eyes of the salamander, oh sorry, not the salamander, the skink, we're using Avalon Sunset. And after we've done the eyes, any of the metal parts we're using lead belcher for. After lead belcher, we are using Abaddon Black, and I recommend thinning this down as it goes on a lot smoother once it's thinned. And we're literally using that on the stick. So I thought, well, in the artwork, the spawn of Chotec / salamander tends to have like this yellow line down, sort of down the side of his belly, I guess. And I thought, well, I'll use Avalon Sunset just to do that line. Basically, it will match, you know, the eyes with the skinks, so it keeps with the colour scheme of the army. Now I'm just doing the tongue, and here I'm using Warlord Purple. Now you can use any other, you know, pinkishy purple colour that you fancy. There isn't really a right or wrong to this, so it's just a case of what you like the look of. For the eyes of the salamander, I am now using Calidor Sky, and the highlight that I'll be doing is light sea blue. Now the feathers on the skink, they were originally black that were painted, so, and then I did a highlight with white from Vallejo range on the feathers. And after that we go in with my favourite colour, which is fire red. Fantastic colour. and it's a great way to do red, I believe. It's fantastic, honestly. Just try it. You'll be impressed. The teeth, I have used Sandry Dust, and by doing that, the model really starts to come to life now. The plant, I have used Death Guard Green on, but once again, that can be any colour that you like. Whatever green you fancy, you can just use, because I know you don't have to specifically get the paints that I'm using for this guide. Now the little pouch that I'm painting on this particular model, I am using Doomball Brown. And you just want to take your time with it, you don't want to ruin the model, so just really do take your time with it. I thought I'd do some experimenting, and I thought, well, there's no way that I'm going to be able to recreate that sort of random pattern by hand, so I was like, right, sponge time. Got a sponge, put some black on it, and then dabbed it a couple of times on the tissue, and then basically just dabbed it on a sail, and that's the effect that we got. I thought it worked really great. So now I'm just using Seraphim Sepia and just shading in a couple of bits and bobs, mainly on the yellow, as well as, you know, around the eyes, around the mouth area, and I believe around the teeth as well. Reichland Flesh Shade, we're using all over the gold parts, and that applies to the salamander as well as the skink. Shades are a great way to basically get your models looking semi-finished. So here I've already done the basing, and you obviously do the basing by putting PVA on your base, dipping it in the sand, waiting 24 hours to dry, and then I strengthen the sand by mixing 50-50 PVA and water, and then dipping the base into it. And here I'm now using Rhinox hide to colour in the base, once again with an airbrush, because it's a lot easier to do it that way, at least for me anyway. And now we're doing Beastie Brown highlight on the base, you know, to add a bit of colour variation to it, followed by a dry brush of Tyrant Skull all over the base. Take your time with it, and try not to get it on the legs of the skinks if possible. However, if you do, it shouldn't be a biggie really. Here we're using the Baden Black. We have thinned it down with thinner, about 60% paint, 40% thinner, and just doing all the rims of the bases. Once again, I tend to get overly excited about trying to finish the models as quickly as possible, so I've probably done that a little bit too early, but yeah, it is what it is. So now I'm just using some PVA and just spreading some flock on the model, using my thumb to just press it down to make sure some stays on, and then just flicking it off with my finger. Yeah, and then that's the sort of effect that you get. Here I'm using the Phony and Camo shade over our plant, once again to make it look better. Now this was an interesting part. I wasn't really sure whether it was going to work, but I've used GW Mephiston Red, and yeah, I did those parts in that colour. I then decided to shade those parts with Agrax Earth shade, so we thinned it down about 50% thinner, 50% Agrax, and then just use that all over the crest. So now we're doing a highlight of Retributor armor, which will then be followed by a highlight of Auric armor gold, and then we're using that on all the gold parts. That is for the salamander as well as the skinks. The teeth I've decided to highlight with a Shabty bone, and I thought it really made the teeth stand out. I really love that effect. So now we're using Liberator Gold to do another highlight on the gold parts. I really find that you know, using you know, multiple golds will make your model look really, really good. So here I'm using Vermilion from the Vallejo range, and I'm just highlighting that head crest of his. So here I'm doing a dry brush of Flash Gits Yellow, and I mainly did that on the yellow parts where the belly is. Oh yeah, so here is the highlights of Liberator Gold on the skink as well. I forgot that I filmed that, to be honest with you, but yeah, it is what it is. And then one of the final highlights that I did was Stormhost Silver, and we're usually just applying that on the sharpest edges of the model. And at that point I realised, oh, I've actually forgot to do these, I don't know, meat that they're carrying or something. And I've used Warlord Purple for those as well. So yeah, that was your quick guide on how to paint Salamander / Spawn of Chotec. I really enjoyed working on this model, and I think yeah, I would end up doing another one of those. I'm not sure if I'll do the same colour, but I probably will add another one of them. It is a really cool model. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, really appreciate it, and see you in the next video.